Cümleten hoş.
Hello everyone, welcome to this symposium or Istanbul Forum 2024 meeting with the title of Knowledge, Will and Order. Today is the second day of this forum and today's topic is economics. We have three speeches in this session. The first one is by Muhammet Bedrettin Toprak. The second one, the title of Muhammet Bedrettin Toprak's presentation is that the increase in inequalities in the world economies, could it be an opportunity for Islam economics? And Murat is the second speaker, second presenter, Rethinking Islamic finance and the potential, discovering the potential of Islamic Fintech, and Yunus Emre Gürbüz, Takaful insurance and opportunities. Muhammet Bedrettin Toprak is in Marmara University in the Islamic Studies Institute, and he is a graduate of economics department of the Marmara University, and he also completed his master's degree and doctorate studies in economics, and also he is continuing his works and research in the same areas. Murat is at Marmara University. He's a faculty member there in Sofia University, Asia and Middle Eastern Studies, and also Islamic finance he worked on after graduation, and he graduated from Boğaziçi University and also from in Reading University. He was a guest for master's degree. And Yunus Emre Gürbüz is from Istanbul University Economics Department, Economics Faculty of Economics, and again in international economics. And his topic of his master's thesis, I'm trying to find the right page. He is the General Secretary for Participatory Finance and Participation Finance, and also he is working still on Takaful insurance, and he is also a lecturer currently. We are starting with Muhammet Bedrettin Toprak. Second panelist is Murat. And our third panelist is Yunus Emre Gürbüz. We can start with your presentation if you want. Muhammet Bedrettin Toprak will be presenting us about can the increasing inequality in world economics be an opportunity for Islamic economy? Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this organization and event. And today I will be talking about the increasing inequalities in the world economics, and also can it be an opportunity for Islamic economy? I have 20 minutes. I will try to create a framework around this topic. I had a presentation flow, and I reorganized it today because there were a lot of similar presentations about the current state of the Islamic economies or economics, and so in today's speech, in my speech, I also would like to refer to the previous presentation, so that it could be more of a dialogue, and maybe we can enrich and also deepen these discussions. First of all, can we start with what do we mean by inequalities? Okay, yes, we can start with that. When we say inequalities as a concept is before the Industrial Revolution and after the Industrial Revolution, it always has been there, but the opposite of this is not equality, because it doesn't mean for everyone to have the same salary, same amount of income, but it is rather referring to social inequalities within some parameters such as skills and intelligence, etc. The possibility of bringing it towards a more equal realm. So it is not completely equality among all. So let's start with that. As a concept, it has always been there in economies, and before the Industrial Revolution and after the Industrial Revolution, there is a huge difference between the inequalities. Before the Industrial Revolutions, in natural disasters or any pandemics, they were actually sources of inequalities, but these types of events, natural disasters, etc., now they are the things that are actually contributing to increasing inequalities. So Simon Kuznets is a very famous economist, and Kuznets curve is in literature, his theory is in literature, and in world economies with the Industrial Revolution, he says that in the first stage the inequality will increase immensely because there is the zero-sum game in the first phase of Industrial Revolution, because in order for some people to accumulate wealth, some other people must lose their wealth, and of course in industrial societies the basic need is the core of the Industrial Revolution is the accumulation of capital as well. So that's why in the first phase the inequalities must increase, and after the Industrial Revolution, after people won their battle against nature, in the second phase these inequalities will decrease. This is a theory that puts forward basically this concept, and Van Zanden has a super Kuznets curve, and this table that we see here shows us that Gini coefficient is the coefficient that we use in this equation. Previously, before the Industrial Revolution, we see different coefficients, and after that in 19th century or 18th century the inequalities and this coefficient is increasing. So this is actually verifying what Kuznets had said before, but people from the modern people were expecting for the second phase to come, but this didn't happen. After leaving the Keynesian politics or policies, and neoliberal policies started to become prevalent, and inequalities started to increase in line with that. So this was actually the contrary to what Kuznets put forward in his theory. So this was actually not in line with what they put forward, what the theory said, and what the expectations were towards. And we have to state that increases in these inequalities actually includes a kind of a good news, because the cake will grow, it will be a bigger cake, and everyone would get a share from this big cake. So that was the optimistic or the positive side people were expecting. So the GDP was over $100,000 trillion. So this is a huge number. Of course, the Industrial Revolution and capitalism success, it is called as a success of these. And yes, the cake grew and it was a bigger cake, and there should have been more shares for everyone, but it didn't happen like that, because not everyone could get their shares from this cake or pieces from this cake. So in this state where we are in right now, the Islamic finance, where does it stand, and what do we mean by Islamic economics? It's not the classical resources of Islamic economics. So when we look at the current state of the Islamic economics, there are two scenarios: the success in the production side and the unsuccessful side, that is the distribution aspect. And it was talked about today earlier, and it's referred to a lot, Quran's theory, and you always remember the discussions around it, but Timur Quran actually says that Islamic economics is lagging behind because the capital accumulation was there were some hindrances that were blocking the capital accumulation. So if we are looking at it from a growth base, if we ask whether he was right or wrong, yes, he was right in that sense, because it wasn't allowing the capital or the wealth to stay in the oldest son, let's say. So the distribution was different. So the measurement changed in that sense. We can say that the distribution and the welfare aspects came into play. So if you look at from one side, we can say that Islamic law or Islamic economics, we would have to defend it. But when we look from the other side, the performance indicators of economics, if it's one of them is to decrease the inequalities and distribution of the wealth better, we can say that Islamic economics show a better performance. So what I think here is that it is important to see from which point of view that we look at Islamic economics. Because are we looking at the assumption that the growth is the divine thing in the world economics, for example? There was a comment, for example, in the world economies, the population of Muslims in the world is around 25%, so around 2 million people. And of course, when we look at the things that are produced and when we look at the growth, for example, we can see that there is a huge gap between the number of Muslim people in the world and the products they produce. So it only corresponds to 10% of the whole production in the world. So if you take growth as the core of economies, then you can say that Islamic economics failed. But if you say from a perspective that Islamic economics actually take as a core, as a basis, distribution, not growth. So you can say that Islamic economics is actually successful, because when we look at it from this side, we see our values, but when we look from the other side, the growth is the sole indicator of successful economies. And of course, this brings along a consumption, a constant consumption, because there would be constant production. And so this means that it's actually dependent on the consumption. So it is impossible to have an understanding around economics that promotes production at the same time and constant consumption. So there is kind of an inconsistency there. We have to choose one side. So my personal opinion is that, and when we look at it from a perspective of historical inequality, Islamic economics is not an understanding that comes as a solution for all, or a solution for everything. So there is an option that we can prioritize some of the aspects that would be the most contributing to the welfare and distribution. So if we talk about the production performance of capitalism, we have to think about how Islamic economics would provide this fairer distribution. For example, let's think about Bakr Sadr. Economics doctrines is probably in your libraries, personal libraries as well. Bakr Sadr really focuses on the distribution and not on production, and also property. So when you read this book without any prejudice or any thinking, you can think that this was written by a communist, for example. So the offer of Islamic economics, the production is not very well studied there. We can say that. So I think focusing on the distribution is more powerful side of the Islamic economics. And of course this comes with the question of how to continue growth. I'm also checking my time. I don't want to exceed my time. Here, modern economics or modern economy, production, consumption relations, when you think of it as the relations between those, the assumptions of modern economies and Islam economies, is there a inconsistency between them, for example? This is a question that we must ask. So the assumptions of modern economy criticizes Homo economicus, and self-maximization is actually promoted, and this is not really a good fit for Islam and Islamic economics. So this is a criticism that usually comes to play, and Homo economicus assumption is actually a thinking around an immoral human. So this criticism is right in a sense, but it's also very easy criticism. So the reason is that when you read Adam Smith or the liberal understanding after him, actually this doesn't promote immorality, but actually says that the personal maximization of personal gain is what brings the immorality. So the personal interests are conflicting, and that is why there are problems arising. So this is an assumption that comes out of this definition. When we look at the Islamic side, the human that is described, let's make a rough estimation around the assumption. For example, there's some layers of nafs. If we put it into a ratio, for example, how many are there in nefs-i levame or nefs-i mutbane? Let's put it very roughly. It's not a scientific comment, but most of them, it's also in the verses, most of them would maximize their self profits. The definitions around economics, for example, that thinks of others or prioritize others' gains or profits, it's not really a reality in the Islamic world either. So the assumptions that we criticize on the other side, it's not really a good fit on this side either. So I think we need to be a little bit more precise about what we are criticizing. And Ottoman Empire, why did Industrial Revolution not improve in Ottoman Empire? Ottoman Empire economy did not show the sufficient level of performance, for example. There are some criticisms like that. In the classical world, before the Industrial Revolution, growth was perceived as change, and change itself is diverting from the ideal scenario. So it's not something that is perceived as something positive. So if you are in an ideal state, it is impossible for you to keep growing, and you have to go through a change, and it was not perceived as a good thing. So change or growth was not the agenda of the economical understanding of that time. And we are unfortunately making the mistake of criticizing them for not changing. I'm not saying Ottoman Empire was right or wrong about that, but the assumptions were different, and that's why I wanted to underline it. And the assumptions, we are completely taking the assumptions as data. So we have an assumption towards the Ottoman economy as well. If we go back to the question, the increase in inequalities for Islamic economies, can they be an opportunity? Yes, but on one condition. We should, first of all, look into the basic assumptions about the modern economics. We should ask more meaningful questions related to that, related to the fundamentals. I want to add one more thing. Asad Zaman, for example, I want to say a couple words about him. He's a person that I really respect a lot. If you listen to him speak in the previous presentations, he said 0 unemployment, 0 inflation, and 0 interest rate. So 0 unemployment, 0 inflation, and 0 interest rate. Yes, theoretically it's a meaningful discourse, yes. But we talked about the assets in the world was around 100,000 trillion euros. So what this tells us is that the total financial growth are bigger than what we see in the real world, and cloud capital systems are being talked about, and technologies are being talked about, and the finance and the profits that comes from the capitalism aspect. We see the profits realizing in the real world, but there are some dreams that are good to have, and there are some assumptions that we might have based on reality. So we shouldn't really miss the difference between them, and we should be careful about differentiating them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. And economy is an area where everyone talks about in Turkey, and the GDP distribution was put forward and explained with a curve by Gini. As a mathematician, maybe I could contribute to this subject. Inequalities are existing because they want to equalize the different clusters. So if you can actually define inequalities, there are now two sides, so two clusters and two classes. So when we look at your presentation, your speech, the parameters that define the world economics, whatever they are, the differentiations and the conflicts between them, inconsistencies between them are a lot. So this could become an opportunity for the Islamic economies. And you also put some emphasis on humans as well, because the beings that experience the economy is humans. And I want to define economy as a mathematician. You talked about assumptions, for example. We talk about whether the dollar or euros, etc., which parameters trigger the other one, and we cannot really say that clearly every time. Of course, there are theories, there are assumptions. So thank you very much for being really clear with your presentation. Now we will have the presentation of Murat, Rethinking Islamic Finance and Exploring the Potential of Islamic Fintech. The floor is yours. Should we get off the stage?
Yok, öyle çekilelim.
Okay, we can take here now. Okay. I think you can all hear me. First, I would like to extend my thanks to Cihannuma and them. So, thank you so much for allocating your time. My topic is Rethinking Islamic Finance, Exploring the Potential of Islamic Fintech. So crypto coin is in a high demand, you know, so we do not actually have any one, but we will talk about the spirit, the core of Islam, and which products we use, and how Islam Fintech create a solution about that. So now these Islamic products are mostly depending on debts, because the sharing, there are a lot of contracts which is actually promoting the risk sharing actually, but now it is mostly, there are a lot of contracts now depending on the debt, and this is an Islamic finance which is like that. So now the Islamic finance and the spiritual dimensions of Islam cannot be reflected into these institutions. So for these both of these problems, how fintech creates solutions about these problems, I will give some examples about that. I have 3 stages in the presentation. I have an introduction, then for the risk transfer, and we will talk about debt-based Islamic finance and how the transition is important, and also we will also talk about how Islam fintech create alternative solutions. So for the real sector, and we have a financial sector, of course, they feed on each other and support each other. So it goes to 20 years, and we didn't have a fintech system. Mainly we had the banking system, which is interacting with the capital markets. So, and banking systems are actually the places where the risk is transferred and debt is given, and the private equity and risk share is intense, but fintech is actually providing services which exist, which in the markets, but provide alternative products for this system. So it can give new, it's a new sector and emerged as a new sector. So the Islamic finance, they goes back to 50 years, but in the last couple of years it accelerated more. Now we have total value of Islamic finance assets worldwide is around in trillion US dollars. Now is reflected in the graphic, as you see. Now we have around 100 countries, and even in some non-Muslim countries we can see Islamic finance institutions. But of course, in the first years of Islamic finance, of course, there wasn't unique products or institutions, but they had the motivation for that. But in the last 30 or 40 years, it mostly were about the making the conventional or existing finance products Islam, more and more Islam, so make them more Islamic, you know. So, of course, it creates a question here, because is it really Islamic? Which difference does it have? Or you call it as interest, but you call it as a different one? Aren't they similar? So, of course, there are a lot of voices throughout the world about that. So, when these questions occurred, of course, the Muslims, of course, they said that they are both meat. One of them is halal and the other is not halal, but there is a spiritual difference, they say. But so they tried to make it accepted that it is similar. So with the alternative systems and institutions, we are persuaded that there can be alternative institutions. So we still believe that so Fintech actually grows very fast in the last years. Now it is around 300 billions of dollars, and now in how does it make it? Of course, they actually create alternatives to banking and capital markets. Which institutions we have actually? There are a lot of different institutions which have different functions, but there are a lot of fintech institutions, but they are mostly focused on 2 or 3 sections. First, alternative fund collecting systems. Second, alternative fund usage, and third, the other alternative finance institutions. And also, there are a lot of fintech institutions focused on social finance. And so, in short, actually, they are creating alternatives to current and existing Islamic banks and Islamic capital markets institutions are actually trying to improve their products, how they can improve it, how they can reflect the missing points, fill the missing points in a more Islamic way, reflect the Islamic spirit to them. So they are focusing on this, and of course they are actually creating solutions for these problems, I can say. So first, for the risk transfer and risk sharing, how we can make a transition from risk transfer to risk share. I would like to show the photo of Turkey now. First, let's talk about debt and equity. The contracts focused on debt and equity, what are they? When we can have a look, all of them. The left ones are actually focused on debt, and the right are actually more similar to risk sharing. So, for the debt-focused instruments, we see that there's a common and widespread application, because it is also, we develop products mostly for debt-based products. And we have more products in here, but we have Mudara, Musharaka, about the sharing of equity, or we have contracts like that. So, let's have a look to the world. Now, 70% are now Islamic banking instruments are debt focused, and 25 of them are skewed outstanding, and most of them are again debt focused. So 95% of the products of Islamic banking assets are debt based, and so Islamic funds, they also have some debt based one, and they also have risk sharing funds. And even 50% of them, again, based on debt. So Islamic finance is a system mostly based on debts. So Turkey, what is the system in Turkey? We can see the participation banks' distribution of allocated funds by contract type. 55% is murabaha, vekalet, debt base is 70% now again. Tavarruk, musara again are debt based, and so 85%, and leasing, financial rent, it is again between debt and equity, risk sharing, but it is closer. We have Quart Hassan, 1%, but it's mostly given to the rich. So it's not given to the poor, actually. It also frustrates us, of course. So let's have a look to Suku, the leasing contracts, and 80% of them are vakala. So the bank is the vakala, and the bank says, okay, then I will take 10% of it and I will leave the rest to you. So actually it is mostly focused on a stable revenue, and we have hybrid models. It is mostly mixed with taharruk and leasing, and it is again focused on stable revenue, and 99% of the market is mostly focused on stable revenue. So let's have a look to the Islamic funds. In Turkey, there are a lot of Islamic shares, which are actually based on share, of course, but we should also think about, we should also say that we can relate 10 funds in Turkey, and how many of them are focused on shares, because not all of them actually investing on shares. They are actually short-term or funds, or golden and silver funds, and none of them are the shareholders of a company, for example. Most of them actually have based on debts, actually, we can say. So 3 days ago I got these top 10 largest Islamic funds. They don't have a risk sharing here. So in short, when we have a look to the photo, we have an Islamic finance system in Turkey and in the world which is based on debt, and big institutions are actually, they break down the relationship between the ones who gives the debt and the debtors, and we don't know from whom we get this debt. So there isn't a spiritual bond between the debt and the debtor, the borrower and the debtor. So people only think about if there's an ATM closer to my home, and who is giving this money to me, will it have a contribution to the society, etc. They don't have a concern about that. And also, we also have to, in the stock market, we again have big institutions. Like in the early stages, of course, small investors cannot invest to, but we also have angel investors, again, rich people, and they still buy these shares in a very cheap way, and they try to be a shareholder in a not fair way. So, which alternative fintech institutions provide you? The first is about financial access. This is a report that the World Bank released, how Islamic fintechs can improve financial inclusion. And in the world now, we have 1.8 billion people doesn't have, they have a smartphone, but they don't have a financial access. They don't have any bank account, or they cannot get a fund or give a fund. So 1.8 billion people are outside the financial system in the world. So especially for the people who have the smartphone, actually, there's a very growing population, mostly in Islamic countries, who have smartphones. So in all Islam countries, we see the access to the smartphones is growing bigger and bigger. So why we don't have Turkey here? Because Turkey has higher access to finance, they didn't include Turkey. So our access to smartphones was earlier than the others. Actually, we have a better position than them. But this is just for the last couple of years. I think it was 2018 or 19. So there's an example. This is a microfinance institution in Indonesia. So it is a mobile banking application. So in the villages, there are people living in the villages of Indonesia. They don't have any bank branch there. They cannot put their money to a bank, or when they need money, the banks say that you don't have any asset. Why I give you a finance? But these microfinance institutions access to these people, and they create an opportunity for them to use this. So with this mobile banking, they cannot even pay their invoices, bills from the phone. But now, with this banking system, they can enter to this finance system. Another example, this is again a crowdfunding fund angels from Turkey. They have some more Islamic sensitivity. Again, small investors here can be a partner to some companies or even some bigger ones, and you can see the properties and features of this company, how much they need, what is the accounting, what is their balance sheet, what is the risk, etc. They can see them in detail, and then they can be a partner of these small investors. And small entrepreneurs also can find investors without going to a bank, and they actually share the risk and grow bigger together. So Fintech is actually promoting risk sharing like that. And we also have Islamic P2P lending. So here, again, if someone needs a debt, in which term they can pay, or how much interest or share they have to pay, etc. This is another example from Indonesia. And we can see in which situation you can have, and you can select whatever person you want to have. For example, you want to contribute. It can be a farmer, it can be an orphan, or a small investor who contributes to the environment or to the society, a company who does that. You can select your own criteria to finance or to give debt to someone you like or someone you want to contribute. So such opportunities are also again important in this sense. This is another example from Indonesia. So, social finance, like zakat, sadaqah, how they can be integrated to finance system. Now, there's a fundraising, for example, and maybe sometimes people raise funds that is needed, more than needed, for example. Or they can have a fundraise. For example, in Palestine, there are a lot of that, again, because people gather together for helping each other. Just like zakat, it is based on helping each other. It's a system like that. And in the current conventional insurance system, it is an alternative. So, in 2010, they started Takaful insurance in Turkey. Why it was? Please inform me when my time is over. Why? Because in 1978, Islamic scholars, Ibn Abidin, even at the end of 17th century, they encountered with insurance, but because of this gharar, which is the Islam scholars do not allow insurance systems, because with the contracts you make, it needs to be clear about what is to be bought and what is to be sold. So we don't know when the damage claims will be made in an insurance system. So because these things are uncertain, this risk couldn't be explained, so risk transferring insurance system was not seen as jaiz, was not seen as appropriate by Islamic finance. But in Islamic coordination meeting, the other Islamic scholars in a total agreement, they created Takaful insurance system, because just like zakat, they said that it can be an institution that people can gather together, and then after a year in Sudan, they created a company in Takaful insurance company in Sudan. So why Islamic scholars needed Takaful? Because there was something uncertain for the supporting each other principle. They have to behave as Islam rules, of course. So now, today, in Turkey, we have 60 insurance companies, and 4 of them are Takaful insurance system. And so what they do, actually pricing, or all of them are similar, but they gather people together, and the company just functions as an operator. People are all participating to this pool, just like Hazret Prophet created Medina contract, just like it. It's just like a pool system like that. And also, then here they have an important support there, and there is also need here, of course. There need to be cars again, and so we need to have a look about that. And of course, when the company is sold 20 years after, for example, it belongs to the customers. So whoever gives the cars, they can get the company. So here there is actually a purpose for helping each other, just like zakat. But another important factor in the insurance system is, the second is without interest rate. So today, I had a look to the last points, and there was actually at the end of October, there is around 9.630 billion of Turkish liras was spent in insurance companies, and Takaful companies were used like that. And so if Takaful insurance, where these 30 billion Turkish liras stand, they actually are in without interest rate accounts, in golden or silver accounts or something like that. But with this Takaful system, without this Takaful system, all of these money will be can be used for interest, So it is an important part. It's an important topic in insurance. They mostly talk about that. But I have to talk about that in a finance ecosystem. It is an important argument, I would like to say. So thank you for that. And so I would like to say that thirdly, this Takaful system is actually, we have a Shari consulting committee which has experts from Islamic law. And also, lastly, illegitimate incomes are not insured, of course. So
if we were to go back to beginning, not having any interest rate is not just to not put anything that is accumulated into the interest. So if, for example, a vehicle, for example, that is under Takaful, let's say a person driving under the influence hits someone with this vehicle, you cannot get this money back. Even the interest rate that is afforded, that is given by the courts, for example, you cannot get that interest rate. It is actually kept in a pool of penalties, and then it is used in good deeds, doing good deeds, apart from, building mosques or anything like that that is forbidden by the Holy Quran. So when we look at the other opportunities, of course, it brings people together with helping other people, and we talked about the interests, and there is a concept of transparency, and it cannot be a tangible thing that can be measured, but Takaful companies have this absolute customer or client satisfaction. If the car parts replaced are original, for example, they have to be replaced with originals, and they are not worried about the interest rates, of course, like for example nightly interest rates, so they pay these payments really swiftly, and it is really a transparent and very just system, we can say that. And other than that, peer-to-peer, for example, is another system. So it is a peer-to-peer system, and similar systems exist in the world, but regarding this peer-to-peer system, it was also included in the strategy document, but there is no Takaful system that is applied or implemented in the world. I wish that this peer-to-peer system, which is really close to the Takaful system, because it actually brings people that are that know each other, and people who have fraud risk, for example, they are kicking them out of the system. So it is a good implementation, good thing. Hopefully, Takaful could also be implemented all around the world. And generally, I can summarize my presentation this way. Thank you very much, Yunus, Emre. After everything that I gathered here, I can say a few words here. The world finance. We are actually challenging the world finance with Islamic finance or Islamic economy. All these things that we talked about today is a result of our efforts so far, and of course our main objective is to create some alternatives for people. And when we look at this world economy that is working on or growing on these days, our daily lives are producing products for them. So we are to them faulty products, let's say. So we also have to think about people, the humanity, and our values. When I look at this Islamic finance or Islamic economies, they are not really in demand by people. And but Murat Hoca mentioned that it would be tripling in the upcoming years. So this trend is really promising, and it's really a positive indicator. But the institutions that profit the most are the ones that are working with interest rates, and the banks that are actually earning haram money. So I would like to thank everyone for coming here, for your participation and your patience. If you have any questions, we can take them now. We can start from here. Thank you, thank you. Now, I want to tell a joke about the general subject, Harun Reşit and Behlül Divane. And Harun is the head of the state, and Behlül is almost considered as like a crazy person. So during Ramadan, Harun Reşit gives some money to Behlül and says, bring this money to the poorer neighborhoods and distribute it. And Behlül goes and does what Harun Reşit said. And then he says to Harun Reşit, I actually determined, I chose all the rich people in this neighborhood. I gave them all the money. And also he says that, Allah gave the money to the rich people, so I'm not more knowledgeable than Allah, than I should have given them the money. So we talked about the capitalist economy and the Islamic economy. When we think of the institutions, etc., I think the focus, the main point, the focal point should be the poor people. But it seems like it is more advantageous for richer people. So what do you think about that? Yes, I think I should answer this question, but this anecdote was really funny. Thank you very much for sharing it. And when we look at the Islamic literature from a perspective of the last 50 years, we see this, the capitalism danger when it exists in the world. Islamic studies say things that are more towards the communist discourse, and when it's the other way around, the discourse goes towards a liberal approach. And lately, the financializing is becoming another aspect in this area. The finance hegemony is a reality now. So it reminds me of this question: Islamic economy, is it still following a trend that is already existent in the world? And unfortunately, and I'm afraid that yes, it does, because the things that are increasing the inequalities are actually, leading the way to help rich people, already wealthy people, to earn more money. So the system now serves this purpose. And yes, this is a very basic and core question we have to ask. Islamic finance is a little bit more in the forefront compared to Islamic economy, and it has its own paradigm and has its own objectives. But of course we have to look out for the danger that Islamic economy is also following a trend that is already existent in the world. So we should also be more focused on the distribution part. Based on your question, I can say that this is the most important thing we can do. Distinguished panelists, thank you very much for your presentations. And you said there's a new production of a new type of humans, and there's a quote that I want to share. Everyone knows that people create laws, but very little number of people know that law makes people or creates people as well. So when we look at the globalized world, we are thinking about or talking about these issues, but there's not much of a tangible offer that comes from our side. Maybe a little bit more detailed research in this area could be helpful. Should we not have any other preparations or any initiatives regarding this issue? I can answer, but yeah, it's all on me now. So I spoke in a more, let's say, broader manner. That's why I think the questions are coming to me a little bit more. Of course, there should be some offers that we put forward, but we also have to think of the how we put forward the discourse of Islamic economy, because it shouldn't be like a recitation. It is not something that should be constantly referring to the verses or to these types of utterances. Maybe we should be more focused on the objectives of Islam and Islamic economy. So these offers should be more implementable and more sustainable. So we have to lay the groundwork first. Of course, if Islam, we can say that Islam assumes that people should have good morals. What does it mean? Are the other people immoral, for example, if they're not following this discourse? So I think our definition of humans and assumption of humans and also assumptions regarding economics, of course, it's not well defined. Hopefully, we would be talking about those definitions in a more tangible way. So it's a very broad question and very broad answer. I wanted to add one sentence here, especially during the pandemic in the Netherlands. There was a ship full of masks, and they put it in France, and everyone was really shocked. How did they do that? I think European countries they have to move towards an Islamic economy, because with the Great Depression or the other examples of crisis, economic crisis, are the indicators of this need. And with the technology, the finance world is growing so rapidly. It used to be, everything used to be based on gold and US dollars, but now that's not the reality. So I'm not really pessimistic about everything, but I also want to say that the Islamic economics has a philosophy and a technical side. So when we look at the literature, they say in the studies that the finance or the economics, the marginal profit or benefit or the consumption ratios, etc. These measurements are usually used to explain things. Technically, we don't have to find other technical terms. But as a philosophy, starting with moral economy of Adam Smith, we should start from them. So it is usually self-centered. You said Tefani, for example. Preferring your nafs or yourself to others. These types of things we should be talking about, and we have to move forward with the Islamic economy. I don't know which country or which area this flag will rise from, but I think the European countries are pregnant to an Islamic economy. I can add a couple words also. The West is appealing to the mind, the East is appealing to the heart. So you say there is nothing mathematical related to this. For example, the formula for gravity, for example, is valid all around the world, but people have spent so many years trying to come up with that equation. So we have to say the right things, and we also have to bring up people who can understand the right words that we are speaking. So when there are advertisements for two different banks, for example, we listen to both of them and we choose one because they are actually appealing to the mind. So you decide with your mind which one to go for. And this order, this system is bringing up people who are similar to them, who are going to contribute to this system, who are going to continue and sustain the system. So that's why they are actually holding on to these areas. And other than that, we are all aware, just like you said, with the participation banking system and the other banking systems principles, for example, everyone can differentiate between them. But unfortunately, there has not been a demand towards the participation banking. And as a mathematician, I am agreeing with the person who asked the question. Unfortunately, we cannot really talk about an offer that would be creating a good demand among people. But I also want to say that, again, referring to the previous presentations, and there was a threefold increase in the demand, so hopefully that's a good indicator. I want to ask Mr. Muhammet about the inequalities he mentioned. For example, there are some capital groups, directly or indirectly, they are using some money or some assets in their own favor, and unfortunately, there is nothing left for the poor. And with different arguments, they are entering the markets and then they leave, for example, after destroying the markets, after pushing the economies of countries. They enter the markets, they organize very rapidly during the pandemic, whether it is the pandemic or other difficult situations. They come in, they take the money, and they swiftly leave. Is there any legal repercussions of this? And I also want to ask, the Islamic finance and its arguments put forward, when we talk about the reasons why it didn't actually meet the expectations, can Islamic finance not produce any tangible results without needing another new basis? When you talk about basis, what do you mean by that? I mean, there are a lot of different factors that impact Islamic economy. For example, some countries have 99% of Muslim populations. For example, I have a student here, they have a Muslim population of 78%, and none of them thought about, why don't we have Islamic finance in our country? And some places we look at the awareness level and it is higher. You look at the Malaysia example, for example, it's 60% Muslim, and most of the capital is held by China or Chinese people. There are some political reasons for that, and the political infrastructure, which religious or ethnic group is owning the most of the capital, for example. There are a lot of different factors, and when they all come together, this is the only way that the sector grows. And when you look at Turkey population, maybe the number of Muslims have been decreasing, but the demand for Islamic financing is increasing. There are a lot of different factors, such as political, legislative, or financial, different factors, so they all affect the situation. And most institutions are recently emerging institutions, so there are some bad experiences that were experienced by the people beforehand, and of course there are some people who want to exploit the religious feelings and thoughts of people. So that's why it can break the trust between the people and these institutions. That could be another cause. I can also answer very shortly, and we have to go to the prayer as well, so I don't want to say much, but the inequality is growing in the world. Techno-feudalism is upon us. Big companies such as Amazon, for example, they are getting huge shares from the world, a lot of money, without producing anything. And also, there are some regulations that are tried to be put in place to prevent these companies to do this. So they are actually disturbing the public benefit or benefit of the public, and also the welfare levels should be protected. And Sakıp Sabancı said, for example, we have to give our employees enough salaries because they are also the ones who are buying our refrigerators that we produce, that we manufacture. So they need to be able to afford them. So of course, if we continue this way, for example, it goes towards a monopoly, creating a monopoly. So bubble, bubble, there goes trouble is a saying that is used for describing these types of events. But of course there are some legal or legislative or regulations that are tried to be put in place. And I think there should be a balance created, because of course the owners of capitals, they try to escape to countries where that are safe havens or tax havens, and there should be policies that would keep the balance on the production side and on the consumption side. So it is difficult to manage, but hopefully our country would be a country where Islamic finance is implemented, and hopefully we can see better days for both ourselves and for the Islamic economies. Thank you very much. We are really exceeding our time, so I think we should end this session here. Thank you very much for your participation. Now I would like to give the floor to Muhammet Çiğdem, the President of the board. On behalf of our board, I would like to thank all the panelists who contributed to our forum with their presentation. Thank you very much to all the participants who came here, and Mehmet Zeki İmamoğlu will now present their gifts for our panelists.
Zaten bitti.
Çok sağ olun. Aynı şeyi. Bedrettin. Eyvallah, sağ olun. Teşekkür ederim.